Welcome to the Thought Leader Recruitment Podcast, episode 5, where we explore how industry leaders are tackling today's biggest talent challenges. I'm your host, Sam Bylett, and today I'm excited to be joined by Alexander Cookaburra, founder and director of Cookaburra. Alexander has established himself as a bridge between the UK and Australian hospitality talent, bringing in a fresh perspective to recruitment in the industry. Alexander, welcome to the show.
Thanks for the invite, Sam. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure. So yeah, let's start at the beginning. What was the initial spark that led you to create Cookaburra?
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia. I finished high school in 2011, and straight from high school went into starting off as a chef. As I mentioned, I went straight into the industry at about 17 years of age. Went in there, started off at a small seafood restaurant, and just basically worked my way up from there. I've done 14 years in the industry. I worked in fine dining, was my first role. Worked in a casual dining Aussie restaurant in the heart of the CBD in Perth, the business district. Worked in mining, so buffet style. Moved on to cafe in the UK, then to another restaurant in the UK, and finished off at a Michelin star. I had quite a large, spectrum of knowledge across the board within different kinds of cuisine, as much as the style of the dining experience. So it seems quite a large spectrum. What initially sparked Cookaburra was I had a bit of time off from work. I'd say around 6 months, where I was able to really think about, reflect on my career. I always said I didn't want to be in hospitality forever. I didn't want to be 40 years old and still working in the industry, because it is a hard industry. It's a hard grind in the industry. As when we get deeper into it, you would understand. But I didn't want to be 40 years old, still be in the industry. And my next step was having this time off to reflect and kind of go over everything. What initially sparked it was the name itself, Cookaburra, which is bit of a triple entendre. Kookaburra is a native Australian bird, so that's where I got the initial idea. But it also represents cook, as in the chef side of where I came from, and then burra, as in the English burra. I kind of, from that name, I was going through a transitional period where I wasn't quite recruiting at that time, but I was going and doing a bit more of casual work as a chef. And I sat up in bed one night and just thought I wanted to kind of create a culture, or I don't know if culture is the right word, but I kind of wanted to build something where we had hospitality workers within the borough working for restaurants within the borough as well, creating sort of community. And that initial spark was through temporary work that I was doing. Now, that was the initial idea, but to get to that stage, I realized that I had to kind of expand and work on a bit more of the permanent side to build up a client base before I could then tap into, the temporary idea and the mission that I wanted to, or the vision that I wanted to create.
So you say you worked across Australia and the UK in kind of various hospitality roles. How did those experiences shape your approach to recruitment?
Well, I definitely saw there was a lot of differences within each kind of, country. With the UK and England, the two separate beasts. Australia definitely looks after the workers a lot more. And I'm sure we'll touch on a few points over this podcast regarding that side. I guess the first one would be if you want to roll into education. So education is huge in Australia. As I mentioned, I finished high school and went into the industry, but I was almost pushed to do an apprenticeship workers get into the industry not because they're looking for a job as such, because they're wanting to make a career out of the cooking, out of, not just cooking, that's my background, but, waiting, management in hospitality, whatever, being a bartender, it's seen as a career as opposed to a job in Australia. So there's a lot of emphasis on education. I finished my high school, went into my first job and got told that I'd need to start an apprenticeship. So I went straight into trade school, what we call trade school, might be college over here. Correct me if I'm wrong. A place where you go and seek a higher education for things like electricians, plumbers, hairdressing, makeup artists, fashion. So I realized that a lot of people will finish their school and either go into their trade school or go into university. Over here, you get into university and you don't exactly study the course that you want to do. You study something to become something completely different. Whereas in Australia, you study something at university and you go and follow that kind of role. So with trade school, it's quite important that you got to understand that you don't go to trade school and go into fashion to then become a chef. You go straight into your trade and then you work on that trade and then you go in and continue that on. Because as I mentioned to you, education is huge in Australia after you finish, whereas I find the market in hospitality over in the UK is a lot of, first of all, we'll touch on this a bit more down the track, but the UK has been run by a lot of the European market. And a lot of the European market hadn't invested into their education. There was a lot of people coming into the industry that were looking for a job because the UK sees hospitality as quite a low-skill job. And so does Australia. But again, like I said, there's a lot of people that want to make a career out of it as opposed to just finding a job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely correct. Like a barman or a waitress is definitely seen as more of a job than a career. I would have thought, almost like a stopgap sometimes for people just to earn a little bit of cash. Yeah, absolutely. And what makes the Australian approach more hands-on?
So I think, again, going back to the my education within the industry, doing an apprenticeship, I find that apprenticeships it's a physical thing. A lot of the UK market is practical, right? So when you're working in kitchens, it's a practical skill. It's not exactly, a lot of the UK theorize hospitality. So they'll sit in a classroom and learn the paperwork side of things, but they're not actually learning the skill. They're not actually putting it into practice. Whereas over in Australia, we go to these trade schools, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a couple over here that do the same thing, but we go there and we actually cook. So we're not just sitting behind a desk learning about cooking, but we're actually physically doing the cooking with a teacher up the front, classroom full of students, and working on that skill, honing that skill. And it's a 3-year course. So it's not a 1 year, get it done and get into the industry. It's a 3-year course, honing the basic skills to then train you up to be in the industry. But not only that, while you're doing that apprenticeship, you're working a job at the same time. So you're learning the skills, those basic skills in the classroom, and then honing them further into the job or the industry itself.
Gotcha. And what do you think businesses often believe they can efficiently train staff themselves? What's the hidden cost there?
Yeah, so from my personal experience working in the industry in the UK, I find that, again, like I said, because of a lot of workers seeing it as a job as opposed to a career, there's a lot of people coming in with no previous history of working in kitchens, which is fine. There is a market for that, entry level market for these type of workers. But again, you want that passion to see it as a career, and then you can hone those skills from the ground up. So going back to what you said, the hidden cost is when you have someone that doesn't have any previous education coming into the industry, there's time taken away from senior roles to then nurture these workers, candidates with no experience, taking away time and resources away from the business itself to then nurture these workers. So, for example, myself, that was in a senior level as a chef, they had to go and take away the time and resources from my job to then nurture someone that has no prior understanding of the difference between coriander and parsley, let's say. Whereas if you have, if you've hired someone that's done their 3-year apprenticeship, or even it doesn't have to be an apprenticeship, but a further education in hospitality, by the time they get into the industry, even if it's an entry-level role, you're starting the candidate 3 years into it, as opposed to no years, and then having to train them up until that 3-year point. So you're taking away the time and resources away from the business to then, nurture someone with no skill. It's a costly process within itself that a lot of people don't recognize. And yeah, I think for entry level roles to start off with some sort of education.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a massive benefit in that. I mean, they're getting them with 3 years training almost. So they're going to hit the ground running, aren't they? Rather than someone that's never done it before. That makes total sense to me, for sure.
Well, I think the 3-year course is just to build a ground base. It's just your base skills, the understanding of the difference between parsley and coriander, the understanding of basic knife skills, the understanding of basic stops and sauces, things like this, just basic understanding. So when you do get into the industry, you have that base knowledge, and then it's just a matter of the workplace just nurturing those base knowledges.
For sure. So the hospitality industry has changed its approach to perks and benefits over the years. What wellness incentives are you prioritising at Cookaburra, and why is that?
Yeah, so I've actually written down a few. I'll start off with a few facts, actually, which I've written down. Just to give you some facts, the University of Cambridge and the University College of London reported 23.8%, which is 1 in 4 workers had mental health problems. The Royal Society for Public Health in 2019 reported 84% attributed increased stress directly to their job. In 2023, there was a report from the Human Focus, which said that 4 in 5 reported stress from the demanding industry. In 2018, there was a study published. PubMed Central reported 70% of hospital workers felt overworked, and 45% said they took stress leave. After the pandemic in 2023, the Wild Goose report indicated 2 out of 3 UK hospital workers indicated their mental health was worse than the height of the pandemic, with 100% felt like they lacked support from employers. So we really want to hone in on the wellness in the hospitality. So there are hospitality benefits have circled around a lot of nightlife. So pubs, bars, also restaurants, usually unaffordable, that discounts, but unaffordable discounts towards restaurants. And as I mentioned, nightlife, which the industry already struggles with a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. So I feel like the perks have only made that worse within the industry. So we wanted to draw away from the standard normal perks of, these nightlife perks and unaffordable restaurants to then incorporate more of wellness within the industry. So we want to do gym memberships, yoga studios, Pilates studios, ice baths, saunas, all these things. And just while we're on this point, corporate has led the way in perks in this sense, in the wellness perks. But we believe at Cookaburra that hospitality needs it more. It's arguably hospitality needs it more than corporate, given these facts that I just rolled out. So we're really trying to hone in on the wellness in hospitality, and therefore offering these incentives for the workers, for the employee to take advantage of. Like I said, we're trying to build a portfolio of wellness studios that offer these types of benefits to then be able to offer affordable discounts to the employee. And not only that, we don't just stop at the candidate that we hire, but any client that gets on board with us gets to reap the benefits as well. And then we take it one step further to say that not only our candidate gets to reap the benefits, not only the client gets to reap the benefits, but the whole business that our client operates with gets to reap all those wellness benefits as well. So we're trying to accelerate wellness as well as education within hospitality, and that's part of our mission.
Yeah, that's great incentives. I think as well that's going to really resonate with like the young generation coming through. They seem to be a lot more health aware, I think nowadays to like from many years ago. So I think that can definitely resonate with especially the kind of Gen Z generation. I would have thought that's a great idea. When you talk about nightlife benefits and perks, what do they usually kind of give them? Is it like, are you talking about like free drinks and things like that, or?
Well, man, I wouldn't say exactly free drinks, but definitely discounts at these venues. So as I mentioned, a lot of discounts towards food, which I guess the idea behind that is to go and experience different restaurants and eat at these restaurants, so then you can get ideas and incorporate it into your job, which is a great idea. But again, like I said, they're usually unaffordable on a hospitality wage, unless you're hitting those higher senior levels. Majority of hospitality just can't afford, the everyday worker can't afford the perks and benefits at these restaurants. Towards nightlife, as I mentioned, back in the day we used to, I don't know what it is like now, but back in the day we used to have industry nights at bars and stuff like that, where you get a lot of hospitality workers within the industry come to these bars to then receive cheaper deals. As I said, that fuels already an alcohol issue and a drug issue within the industry. So again, we're trying to take away from that and do the opposite.
Yeah, I resonate with that. I've been a DJ for many years back in the day, and I used to just get plied with drink like constantly. There's no another job in the world where you actually get paid to drink. So yeah, although it's fun, you can see like how people can go the other way with that, and it can become an issue. So, yeah, give me a gym membership any day now.
Yeah, well,
without a doubt.
While we're on that, I as I said, I worked in there firsthand in the industry for 14 years. And not once in any of my contracts did I receive any gym memberships or any wellness perks of that kind. So it's why we're taking this route.
Yeah. And what's a gym membership nowadays? You can get one for like, I think I pay £22 a month for mine. It's fairly cheap, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's it's definitely something that should be done.
We're trying to receive even further discounts on these types of services. So with the hospitality worker in mind. So anytime I go and talk to a studio, I always just say like, the reason why I'm doing this is to improve hospitality, the industry as a whole, and I want to make sure that the worker, that the employee is in mind at all times. Lucky for us, we've had some really nice studios get on board with what we're trying to do and offer discounts up to 50% off their their normal sales.
It's a great idea. So yeah, let's talk about kind of recruitment challenges. So there's obviously a stigma around recruitment agencies and hospitality. And what do you think businesses are hesitant to work with them?
So recruitment agencies in the past have been seen as really expensive, which is an uphill battle for us. They're seen as not very reliable and not a lot of value offered in the recruitment package itself. So I feel like it's been run by a big industry for the last however long. Since the pandemic, I guess there's a new wave of recruitment coming through that I guess add more value to their packages as opposed to these bigger industries. So for time now, the industries have been putting profits over over the client. So basically, they're there to make a quick buck. So we've realized this, and as I said, it's an uphill battle because trying to gain that trust back from the client is quite difficult. Even myself, I've had a client in the past that was apprehensive on using recruitment agencies, but we managed to convince them that it's a good way to use their time. As I said, the hidden costs involved. That's one of them, the time that they take. Plus, a client running a hospitality business isn't qualified as a recruiter. Their main objective is to run their business. The way I kind of won this client over was to say, you put 100% of effort into your business, I put 100% of effort into my business. If you start taking away 50% or 25% of focus from your business into then trying to do recruitment, which you're not qualified at, you're only giving 75% back to your business. Whereas if you focus 100% of your time into your business, I focus 100% of my time into my business, we're both going to get the most out of what we're doing. So going back to your point, I think going against it's just a new wave of hospitality recruitment, and for a long time the big recruitment companies have been taking profits as opposed to really understanding what the client needs and offering back the value that they deserve. So we're there to spend a bit more time with the client, really get to understand the business, not only what role they're looking for, but understand their business fundamentally from the ground up and the culture behind the business, and then match a candidate with what they're looking for.
Yeah, so it's all about adding that extra value.
Yeah, I think just adding the extra value. It's not so much that recruitment agencies are too expensive. I don't believe there are some agencies out there tweaking their packages to fit in a subscription, so a monthly subscription at a lower cost. But as I said, I don't believe that you have to tweak. I don't think there's anything wrong with the payment structure. I believe there's a problem with the value that the receiving hasn't been up to standard. So what we're doing is adding more value so the client gets their money's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we touched on a little bit earlier about Brexit. So how did Brexit impact on European workers, create both challenges and opportunities for Cookaburra?
Yeah, so since Brexit happened, a lot of the majority of the European market had moved back to Europe, which left a huge hole in recruitment. I guess going back to what we're doing, we are an Australian-run company. There's a huge opportunity for us as a recruitment agency to then go and fill those holes with potential Australian candidates that are coming over to the UK. There's a huge deficit in the industry, which gives us the opportunity to go in there and kind of fill those gaps. But there needs to be a lot of work done. Yeah, so there was a lot of staff lost over that time. As I said, the European market moved back home. We think this is a perfect opportunity to get in there and fill those gaps. With the trade strengthening between the Commonwealth and the UK in, I think it was 2019, it allowed Australian workers to come over in the UK, work 2 years with a bridging visa, which allowed them an extra year, and vice versa. So the UK workers are allowed to work in Australia. They don't have to do their farm work anymore. They're allowed 2 years in Australia with a third year bridging visa, I believe. I might have to double check that, but they both get 3 years either side. Prior to that, it was, I believe, 2 years. So it's allowed Australians to stay in the UK for longer, and I think that's a perfect opportunity for us to fill those gaps in. It's just a matter of then strengthening hospitality so it makes it appealing for the Aussie worker, and hopefully that's what we get onto next.
Yeah, for sure. And European staff have had a lasting influence on UK hospitality standards. What specific elements do you think have been most valuable?
I'm not sure if valuable would be the right word to use. As I mentioned, the European market had run hospitality for a long time, because not just Europeans, but also South Americans as well, because it was seen as a low-skilled job. There wasn't a lot of British workers that wanted to work in hospitality because the incentives just weren't there. So the European market filled that gap, as well as the South American. But again, it was seen as a low-skilled job. It was seen as a place where you could leave your country to come into it with a secure job, as opposed to it being a skilled job. See, that's where the differences between Australia and the UK are, is Australia realizes that hospitality, although it still may seem as a low-skilled job, they do view the Australian workers or the industry as a skilled industry. There's a lot of people that do that education, put their 3 years into it, and then come out of it having a stronger industry in that sense. Whereas over in the UK, the Europeans see it as a job industry, and the hospitality industry has been, I guess, they've kind of seen it as a exploitation, in a sense, to exploit the European worker for low cost with, I wouldn't consider it as maximum return, but, you know, because as I said, that you take away time and resources from other people to then focus on building. You're seen as the teacher, you're seen as the skilled person to go and train these people up, in a sense, these workers up from the ground up. So I wouldn't say that that's the correct word to use. It's definitely worked for some time, but the quality could be a lot better, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose that it's kind of a universal job, isn't it? Like a barman or a waitress or a waiter. Like a lot of kind of British people go traveling, Europe, South America, and these are the typical jobs they tend to get.
Yeah,
I suppose. So it's it kind of, I suppose it does work all around the world, really, in that sense.
it does, and I believe there's a spot for these part-time workers or barmen that are looking to study at the same time as working. And I guess I do want to clarify something with workers such as barbacks, kitchen porters, the lower skilled in the hospitality industry. We won't rule them out, but for workers such as chefs, even like a barista or a manager role, we ideally like to have some sort of higher education in those roles when we hire, and hopefully that separates us from the rest. But again, this is going to take some time of adjustment, not only from, I guess, the hospitality industry and the businesses, but also the UK government that might need to make a few changes, and we'll go into that a bit deeper. But I think it has to start somewhere, and we're trying to focus on finding those people with a higher education within the industry, and therefore promoting education within the industry. So when I have a worker, ideally, I'd like to get to a point in my recruitment career and turn around to someone that comes to me for a job and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." I ask them if they can send over their CV and see that they don't have any credentials or don't have any, higher education within hospitality, and then tell them, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a hospitality course? We work with XYZ school, college, university, cookery school, whatever it is, to go and seek there." Tell them, "Sorry, we can't place you in a job at the moment. If you're interested in hospitality career, go and seek these courses at these colleges or universities, etc., and then come back to us after you finish your course, so then we can place you in a role." Therefore, putting us in a place within the recruitment industry, saying this is the kind of quality that we bring to the table. These guys have done their courses. They've now come back to us, and we're happy to place them within the industry. That's the vision. That's ideally where we want to get to. But that's not where the industry is at the moment. But we got to start promoting education within the industry. Otherwise, we're just going to repeat the same patterns, and it's not going to get any better. And now, as I said, now's the perfect time post-Brexit, post-pandemic, post-Brexit is a perfect time to promote a higher quality worker or candidate in the hospitality industry.
Yeah. And them courses, how much they generally is there any kind of government schemes that helps people do them courses, that training?
Look, I haven't got enough research on that side just yet. I'm sure there's plenty of resources out there through the government, but also the highest thing that I'd like to promote in the industry is an apprenticeship. As I mentioned, I did that myself. An apprenticeship, there's incentives to hospitality businesses. The only thing is, if you have a worker come to you and say, I want to work in your business, that's all good and well, but you've got to make sure that you set the expectations that they're there for a career as opposed to just a job. So you have to tell them, if you're looking to get into this industry, like my first head chef did, he said, look at sacrificing your weekends. Look at sacrificing, I was fresh out of school, 17, 18 years old. Look at, not going out with your friends on the weekend because you'll be working. Look at sacrificing family time, Christmas, all those holidays. If this is the industry you want to get into, then we'll support you. But you have to make that decision. And I feel like that's not what we're doing over here. We're not setting those expectations to people to say, hospitality is a tough industry. Look at sacrificing this time off. But in return, you're going to come out with, these skills and, you can make a career out of this. There's great perks to hospitality. It's an incredible industry, and that's why I'm still working within it. But again, we need to promote this. Going back to my first head chef, he said, if you want to come into working with us, you got to see it as a career, and therefore we're going to be putting you in an apprenticeship, a 3-year apprenticeship. It's a 3-year commitment. You'll be working with us 4 times of the week, and 1 day of the week you go off and go to chef school. You learn your basics there, and you get to hone them in the workplace. I think just guiding the industry and into something more of that direction, where the industry quality raises when you have these people that want to seek their education, as well as adding in wellness to that extends the amount of time they want to stay in their job if they receive these benefits. So the retention rate's a lot higher.
Yeah, great. Yeah, fantastic. So let's I want to know your thoughts about America's approach to tips and overtime. What elements of that system do you think the UK should adapt?
So going into the UK policy and I guess the American policy recently, with Trump coming into office. Now, I don't want to get political on this. I don't want to voice any sort of opinion towards Trump or anything else. This is strictly on policy and how it can benefit hospitality. So, anyone can have their opinion on the bloke, but I want to stick to the policy itself. And so Trump's come in and come up with a policy of no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. So I strongly believe that that's going to benefit the hospitality industry as a whole over in America. And I think the UK needs to follow that trend as well, because as I mentioned, after post-Brexit, there's a huge hole in the market, but there's no incentives to incentivize anyone to go and work in hospitality. Hospitality is already seen as a hardworking job, but there's no sort of incentives for anyone to work. And that's why we don't find a lot of Brits in hospitality. They'd rather work in building and construction because, first of all, they get paid more. The quality of life is a little bit better. You're working outside and, it might be a bit grey outside, but it beats working in a basement with fluorescent lights for pretty much minimum wage. So having something like a policy that Trump's put in place, such as no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, could definitely incentivize a lot more workers, especially in this time, to then go into working for hospitality.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. Absolutely, no tax on overtime. I think, especially over here, that would go down very well. But I can never see it happening because we get taxed on bloody everything. It would be amazing. I think it's definitely outdated. Our salary structure, without a doubt, it needs changing for
I
sure.
think having having these incentives, as you said, it definitely could boost hospitality, because a lot of people do work overtime. You might be contracted to, a 48-hour contract, but a lot of the time hospitality workers are working 60, 70 plus hours. So, if you're receiving no tax on that, it could incentivize a lot of workers to start getting into the industry.
Yeah, for sure. What are the main differences between Australian and UK hospitality contracts that
Yeah,
job
so
seekers should be aware of?
I think one of them would be the hours of work. So I think in Australia, your contracted hours are less, although you're expected to also work extra. Your contracted hours start off as less. So I believe it's a 38-hour week contract. As I mentioned, in hospitality, you're kind of expected to work more. But throughout my career over in the UK, I was always being contracted to 48 hours, which is pretty standard. So there's a 10-hour difference. Over in Australia, you get penalty rates as well. So if you're working after 7 p.m., you get the extra 25% of pay. Saturdays, you also get an extra 25% of pay. Sundays, 50% of pay. Public holidays, you get a whole 125% on top of your regular, or you get an extra day off in lieu. So Australia does give a lot of incentives, hence why there's a lot of people that are actually interested in working a career in hospitality over there. On top of that, 10 days sick pay is pretty standard. So paid sick pay, full pay. So any day you take off, it's salary paid, as opposed to a statutory sick pay over in the UK, which is not a lot of money. Let's just say that. I believe it's £109.40 a week, if I'm correct, for statutory sick pay, as opposed to your 10 days that you get a year for in Australia, which is substantially a lot for sick pay. You also get 2 days paid compassionate leave. So as opposed to the UK, you might get some time off, but it would be unpaid time unless agreed upon with your employer, which is quite rare in hospitality. And then your breaks as well. So I recently reached out to a mate that I know in hospitality in Australia, and she's saying that if you don't get your meal break on time, then you get penalized. The business gets penalized for that, have to pay a cost if you don't get your meal break on time. So there's a lot of incentives that Australia gives, not just in the hospitality industry, but to the worker in general. I believe that the UK the UK is very far behind on that and needs to get on top of it. Businesses aren't working the way they used to now that Brexit's happened. There's a huge hole, and this hole needs to be fixed with these government incentives. And I think that's getting on top of these and incentivizing the worker to work in hospitality, make it a better place to work should be at the top of the priority, because that's the backbone of society. That's what brings in a lot of the economy, the UK economy. So I think they definitely need to get on board with that. Another difference between the contracts in Australia and the contracts in the UK, a lot of businesses in the UK have what's called a tronc system, which is a tip system, which separates your pay into two slots. Australia just pays your salary in one lump sum. Sorry, over in the UK, they separate that for tips and for base pay. So your base pay is quite low, and it doesn't benefit. There's not many benefits to the worker, apart from that you don't pay national insurance with your tronc, with your tips. You don't pay any national insurance on that. But that also benefits the business. If you're a worker that goes into the bank and is looking for a loan to buy a house, the bank will only look at your base rate as opposed to your full salary package, which is consistent of the trunk as well as the base rate. They might, if you find a good bank, they might recognize half of the trunk, but usually they only focus on the base rate because they see that as reliable source of income. I guess businesses have been doing this for a while to then, seek those tax breaks. So you're paying your worker a small amount of what the government sees as their salary, basically. So that you're paying a small portion of salary, and then you're topping it up with a huge amount of tips. Whereas what we see in Australia is we see you as your full package salary, and any kind of card tips, back in the day, cash tips, were then split between the kitchen and the floor, back of house, front of house, 30% to the kitchen, 70% to the floor. Therefore, you get your full salary, and then you get the tips that you earn, not work for. Tips are earned. They're something that you receive for the great service you do. It shouldn't be expected to make up part of your pay. You should get your full wage with tips on top, not tips included, if you understand what I mean. It's just that I believe it's a broken system that I think businesses have been taking advantage of to reduce taxes. But not only that, I believe my personal belief is that they've also used that system to kind of put a pot of money aside to then, for larger businesses to send some of their senior employees to on business trips away to other countries to, working holidays, something like a working holiday. But I think these tips shouldn't be going to senior management to go on holidays. I think they should be split up between the workers that are actually working, feet on the ground, working these long hours. So that's my personal opinion. But I think that's the reason why there's been splits between the employee's salary, as opposed to just giving it in one lump sum.
Totally agree with you there. How does Cookaburra's balance skills-based hiring with creating exclusive opportunities? Are there any challenges you face there?
So since I've started this recruitment journey, I've realized that a lot of the businesses or clients that we work with, again, it coming back to what I said earlier, don't really view the skilled worker too much anymore. They'd rather find someone that blends in with their culture, which is why we try to understand culture as much as we can. But from a recruitment side of things, it's quite difficult matching culture. Someone in with culture, it's almost like matchmaking as opposed to skill. So skill is based on someone can send me their CV and I can have a look through their CV and then vet them based off their CV, and understand where someone's come from, what positions they're in, and therefore I understand their skill level, as opposed to if they're going to fit in with a client's culture or not. Understanding they would mesh together, you would have to sit down and go through an interview with them, which we do. But it's a matter of, I guess, at the end of the day, just making an educated guess to see whether this would be the right fit, as opposed to having a solid structure in place that outlines their qualifications, where they've worked before. I think when it comes to us, we'd like to include both. In Cookaburra, we want to be inclusive as much as possible. But at the end of the day, we have to focus on the skill level, and businesses should do the same, because that's what is going to improve their business. You want both. You want someone that fits in well with the culture but has the skill set at the same time. Just from a recruitment point of view, it's a lot more difficult to find someone that has the skill level but also matches the company culture. So we really tried to aim to find the person with the best skill level but also cater for the client to find the right person that's going to fit in well with their business. Yeah, I think it's definitely more difficult trying to find that person that fits in with the company culture as opposed to their skill, because you got it all laid out on a piece of paper. You can kind of see, you can vet, and you can call referees to vet also for the person. So yeah, I guess our aim is to put a blend of both in place as much as we can.
Yeah. So yeah, it's finding that right balance, I suppose, is the key.
Yeah, that's right, %.
If you could make one immediate change to how hospitality industries approach recruitment, what would it be?
I think just giving recruitment another shot to prove that there is a new wave coming. There is a new wave of recruitment coming that isn't just about profits. It's about understanding the client's business. I think just having trust again, having a little bit of trust and faith in recruitment again to allow them to do the job that they're good at. As I mentioned, HR departments in larger businesses are already overrun with their workload. So they're not qualified recruiters. As much as their business might want to be cutting costs, as I said, there's hidden costs in the long run. A lot of HR departments don't have the time and focus to go through each individual application and understand this. So I think that's one. Also, business owners don't have those qualifications as well. And as I mentioned to you before, you start taking away your focus on your business to then step into the recruitment realm. You're then, diverting energy that you should be focusing on your business into doing something that you might only be putting 25% effort into. And another one is, and I can say this from firsthand, when I was working in the industry, I personally have been asked to go and put out an ad on recruitment websites to go and find source candidates personally as a chef. And what I've realized is the platforms aren't used. The platforms that are used in these businesses aren't the right platforms, first of all. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that this is taking away time and resources away from someone's job that a chef shouldn't be recruiting. If anything, it should be part of the HR department, and the HR department, unless they've got a qualified recruiter in the department, then they shouldn't be doing it either. So as I said to you, that's the one thing I change is having that trust in recruiters that they're going to get their return. The client will get their return in the end, and just allowing that possibility to happen and not relying on so much your HR department, or even a chef or someone that's a manager of your front of house. They shouldn't be doing that kind of job. It's not the job that they signed up for, and it's not the job that they should be getting paid to do. This is what I'm talking about taking away time and resources, and I don't think that should be happening within the hospitality industry. It's an industry that's already so overrun by the workload already. Shouldn't be doing recruiting on the side. Just having that faith in recruiters again. Test. You don't have to go and sign up for the whole year. You can just recruit one person. Give it a test run. If you like the service, then let's continue that relationship. I like to say, I never left hospitality. I work in the service industry, but I also never left hospitality. The difference is services offering. So, for example, if you're sitting at a restaurant and a waiter brings over your plate and puts it down on the table, that's service. I believe we're in the hospitality industry because what hospitality is a feeling. It's the way that service made you feel. And we believe that we're not a service. We work in the service industry, but I don't believe that we're not a service. I still never left hospitality. So I want to bring that feeling towards our clients. I want to bring hospitality towards our clients.
I said, what's a personal story that captures why bridging the UK and Australia with hospitality talent matters to you?
Yeah, sure. I guess it's, I grew up in Australia. I've been living in the UK for the last eight or so years, and there's a strong relationship between the UK and Australia, and it strengthened even more, as I mentioned, in about 2019, where the trade deals strengthened. So we extended the time on visas for Aussies and the UK's between each country. So the partnership between the UK and Australia has always been very strong. And we basically, the UK gets a bunch of Australians through the gates every year, and Australia gets a bunch of UK visitors through their gates every year. So it's always been like that. And now that we have this opportunity with the gap in the market in hospitality, I think having those strong ties definitely allow for a stronger bridge between the two countries. I think personally, I love both countries. I actually plan on opening a second recruitment agency in Australia very soon. So watch the space. But yeah, we want to bridge ties between the UK and Australia. So I want to create something where we are the one-stop shop for visitors coming from either country to spend their time over in either country, and we want to be that bridge to them go and place you in those job roles. So we're looking for people to sign up with us, always looking out for skilled workers either way. But yeah, we want a strong UK and Australia tie between the two countries, and hopefully we can make that happen. And that's our goal. Our mission is to create a strong hospitality industry between both countries, while trying to accelerate wellness and education within the industry. If we can do that, then we're on the right path.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your journey from hospitality professional to recruitment innovator. Really appreciate your time today. Where can our audience get in contact with you and follow Cookaburra Recruitment?
Yeah, sure. So the best way to reach us would be, thank you again for your time as well, Sam, and thank you for the extension on, I don't know if your viewers know, but you reached out to me with half an hour, and I said I got quite a few topics that I want to talk about. So I did ask for an extension, which I'm grateful for. Thank you for putting me on your platform and allowing me to have this voice, since there's a lot I wanted to get out. But yeah, you can find us at www.cookaburra.co.uk. Cookaburra is spelled Cookaburra. And if you want to find us on the socials, our social media handles Cookaburra UK.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thanks a lot. So I've been your host, Sam Bylett, and this has been the Thought Leader Recruiter podcast. Catch you next time.